This camera's more than fine.
What do they expect?
Hello, everybody. So we're going to wait a second for folks to join us on YouTube. I've got my friend Damien here.
Hi, everyone.
And Damien's going to speak louder when he talks.
Hi, everyone.
There we go. But give me a second here. We're going to wait a second. Yeah, see, on TikTok, we're going to be a little dark, but we'll live with that. Let me see if folks are joining us. We'll give it a minute, Damien, just for folks. See, one person joining us. I didn't warn folks we were doing this on YouTube, so we're going to wait a minute or two for folks to join us. I'm just looking at TikTok as I'm talking to you to make sure my devices. Hey, Harvey. We're going to start in a minute. There we go. I'm kind of starting with you guys, and then I'm going to start TikTok in a minute. Damien's here.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, guys. Hey, Annalisa. I appreciate that. Hey, Sharon from Pennsylvania. You should be
Congratulations.
Exactly. You should be decently pleased. Let me see here. Oh, nope, don't want that. Yeah, I think we'll just leave that as is. We'll start YouTube. I'm going to start TikTok in a minute, but I'm just letting the YouTube folks kick in. Well, that's not bad considering I didn't warn you guys. Still going to do a show at 6 o'clock about Ukraine. That's my plan. But I wanted to get Damien here to talk about the election results first. You know, let me start. We'll wait another minute. I'll wait another half a minute just for more YouTubers to show up. And then I will start the TikTok and we'll get rolling. All right. Yeah, Texas. Well, and we'll talk about all the different races and stuff. All right, I'm going to start TikTok. Boom. And then we'll give a minute for TikTok to catch up. All right, TikTok is just starting. We'll give it a second to catch. Oops, get my screen. There we go. We'll give TikTok a chance to catch up, and then we'll start. Yeah, very interesting night last night. That's why I wanted to get Damien here to talk about it, because it's very strange.
Wild.
Interesting, good, strange, whatever results. Oops. There we go. That way we can see some of the comments too over on TikTok. Hello, Northern Ireland, Tennessee. Hey, guys on TikTok.
Rough night in Tennessee.
I've got Damien here with us. We're going to, I'm going to wait a minute on TikTok just for folks to catch up and join us. But we're going to be talking about the election results. Damien is an election wizard. So we'll maybe 30 seconds on TikTok for you guys to sort of catch up. Thank you, Way Ray, for the hat already, for the gift. Appreciate that. I guess I'll do an introduction right now. So we're going to talk about the election results. Damien really knows. I mean, I've looked at him. Damien really knows the results. He's going to walk us through them, what happened, different races, with an eye towards what does this even mean, right? What do these election results tell us about where things are going, the various parties? And I will definitely take questions from you guys on TikTok, as always. Obviously, you can use the comments, but probably easier to use the Q&A function, which you'll find in my profile on TikTok, because that way your questions will line up and I won't lose them. Because I'm going to have Damien talk for a while, and then we'll do questions. Thanks, Way Ray, for the gift. So use the Q&A function on TikTok. You guys know on YouTube how it works. You can submit your questions there. Super Chat questions are always welcome, and I will do a priority of answering Super Chat questions. So let's dive right in, guys. So I'm John Aravosis. This is a special edition of the Aravosis Report. Normally, I talk to you about Ukraine. Today, we're going to talk about the American elections, because obviously, big issue and big results. Just ignore the comments. We get crazy people.
Oh, okay.
We have good people, but there's always a few crazy people, and then the crazy. See, like that guy. I'm showing Damien how this works with the. Well, I could tell Damien was leaning in to read the trolls. Never read the trolls, Damien. So Damien's going to talk to us about the election overall. I will just summarize it this way. Yesterday, for any of you not in America, were the midterm elections. Midterm elections, thank you, Artemis, for the gift. Midterm elections means not the presidential elections. So it's the elections that are midterm between the two presidential elections that happen every 4 years. So what pretty much is congressional elections and also state races. So state governors, state secretaries of state, state senate and houses. In other words, the local state legislature. What we saw last night, going into this election, all the pundits, all the experts told us the Democrats were going to be destroyed. Not just were they going to lose control of the House and probably the U.S. Senate, but they would be destroyed. Now, I will say that this is not necessarily a mistake of the pundits, because historically, and Damien will talk to us about this, historically, the president loses a lot of seats in Congress when there's the midterm election. So in other words, Joe Biden wins the presidency in 2020, okay? In 2022, which is now, Biden should have lost 40, 50 seats in the Congress and typically lose control of at least one house of the Congress. That's the way it works. The public usually takes revenge on the president. It's the way it works. That didn't happen last night, but, and I will stop now and throw it to Damien, but it is still not clear. The Republicans are still more likely than not, possibly, to take control of the U.S. House. That's a victory. The Republicans still may have a 50-50 chance or so of taking the U.S. Senate. So even if the Republicans did not have the blowout they were supposed to have last night, they still may take control of one or both houses of Congress. That's a big deal, and that's a big victory. Okay, Damien, so I mean, what happened last night? Is this a big, what do you think though? Is this a big deal for Republicans? Is it a big deal for Democrats? How do you even say who did better?
That's a tough point. Well, Democrats did because they defied expectations. This is the first time since in 98.
Okay.
When Bill Clinton did it, when they actually picked up 5 House seats instead of losing 20, like you said.
Right.
Bill Clinton in his first term, in his first midterm, they lost what? They lost the House and the Senate for the first time in 40 years.
Oh, remember that? 1994 was
1994.
it? And I will say Democrats, back then, because I was hanging out with the Democrats were convinced in 92, Republicans were convinced they'd never win the Congress again. In 94, right. Democrats were convinced they'd never win the Congress again.
Exactly.
But yeah.
And instead they, of course they did. It took a while, but this race last night, it's still going on. It's incredible. I mean, the fact that so many members of Congress that should not have lost their seats have lost.
Right.
And so many of Donald Trump's candidates, especially in Secretary of State races, lost badly, right. And that's a good thing.
Now, mind you, I mean, J.D. Vance won in Ohio, big Trump supporter and big Trump supporter.
But that state is lost to the Democrats.
Meaning
that they're not going to win any statewide races there.
In Ohio?
Yeah, in Ohio. DeWine, that was a given that he would win. He won another landslide. He always wins. He's been in elective office in that. They know who he is.
Right.
And the fact that Tim Ryan, he ran a great race, but he still lost by 5 percentage points or something like that.
Who was the Democrat running for Senate against J.D. Vance?
Exactly.
Right.
He ran a fantastic campaign, but Ohio just isn't a Democrat state on the statewide level anymore. Okay. There is one good news about that. His district at least remained in Democrat hands.
Okay.
So, which was a question.
And Steve Chabot lost, which is surprising. Republican.
That was the first one last night that I was scratching my head at.
Right.
And then, of course, I gave up on Abigail Spanberger.
Tell people who all these people are when you mention that.
Steve Chabot is a longtime Republican. I mean, 20 years, maybe more, in Ohio, and he was not on anybody's list that I'm aware of as potentially losing. And Abigail Spanberger was one of the 3 Democratic members of Congress from Virginia who flipped seats in 2018,
right,
along with Jennifer Wexton and Ann Luria. Luria's district for the last 20 years has gone back and forth every other election cycle between Democrats and Republicans. Not a huge surprise. She could actually, or the Democrats could come back in 2 years and win that again. But Abigail Spanberger, who at one point last night, I think it said 99% and was behind by 10,000, 11,000 votes, she still managed to pull it out. And she actually got more votes last night than she did in her 2 previous elections. So, and she was considered, last night they were saying, if Abigail Spanberger loses, that is a bad sign.
Well, there were 3. Actually, slide up a little bit.
There were 3.
Closer.
There were 2 of them won.
No, what I mean is just move your chair up a little. There we go. Since we're doing this atypically today, normally I've got my expensive microphone and everything, so I'm trying to squeeze us, but we're doing it. It's working.
And Sean, I'm sorry.
Right, the 3 races in Virginia that were considered the bellwethers to watch at the beginning of the evening were Spanberger, Luria,
and Wexton.
And Wexton.
Yeah.
And go on. Yeah.
And Luria was, I mean, that was sort of a given. She was always behind, and like I said, that district keeps flipping.
Right.
Abigail Spanberger, though, if she had lost, that would have been a real blow, but she managed to do it. And also Jennifer Wexton, she was the safest because that's the Northern Virginia, and she has won by much larger, but
Right.
she was still held to a smaller
Right.
version, vote this time.
Okay, just to remind folks, so I'm John Aravosis. This is my friend Damian Corboy, who's an election expert. This is the Aravosis Report, a special edition we're having today to talk about the results of the elections last night in America. So, I mean, let's jump around a little bit then. Let's maybe start with the Senate first.
Okay.
So where do things stand in the Senate?
Right now, it's really just based on Mark Kelly in Arizona, who I do think will win.
Democrat
Democrat Mark Kelly, who is running
Right.
for a full term. He was elected 2 years ago to fill out a term. He was the second Democrat to defeat
Right.
Martha McSally, the appointed
Okay.
Republican senator from Arizona. He's still up by his same margin from last year, 100,000 votes roughly. That's actually very good for a Democrat in Arizona running statewide.
Right.
And it does look like O'Halloran, an incumbent Democrat from the Tucson area, has lost. But it also looks like Dave Schweiker, a Republican from further south, has lost. So they could be looking at keeping hopefully winning. They have won Secretary of State,
Right.
over the
Which
worst.
is big. Right.
Yes, because that guy Fincher was the worst of the Trump. Literally saying to people beforehand, "I'm not going to recognize any election results that I don't like." So
And the importance of the Secretary of State is just that what Damian's saying, which is going into the 2024 elections, the presidential elections, there's a lot of concern about election deniers, about Trump supporters, the MAGA sort of supporters, saying that they simply would not recognize the Republican or the Democratic presidential candidate as the winner of the presidency, even if he or she did win. So, and the Secretary of State has a key function in that, as does the governor. So the fact that the Secretary of State's remaining Democratic is huge, and the fact that the governor, the fact that the governor, at least Carrie Lake, is currently not looking great.
She's already claiming it's being stolen from her.
Well, but she also claimed that before.
Yeah. She's very good at what she does.
But she's not doing well. Now, she hasn't lost yet, but she's not doing well, which is kind of a big deal. Let me step back a second too. I think what's interesting is, and it's funny because Damian's one of those who I really like because Damian approaches it from all the data and remembers all the data. Like my friend Cliff Schechter, who came on a few weeks ago and we did a live with Cliff. I go much more from my gut. And the thing was last night around 9 or 10 o'clock, because Damian was over, and I was saying, why don't we know anything? This is weird. It was just feeling weird that there were no results. There was no nothing.
There was no trend.
There was no trend. And now we know at first we were thinking it was the media being too careful.
Exactly.
That they got burned
Because
so
of
many
the
times.
Right.
But now it seems clear that it's because things didn't work out as planned.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of the Senate then, the big races that we're waiting for that will decide control of the Senate are Georgia.
Yes.
Arizona and Nevada?
Nevada.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, Nevada, the Democrats are having a bad. They have 3 incumbent Democrats who've been there in Congress, Titus, Lee, and Stephen Horsford. All of them are currently just at 50%.
Right.
So that's not good. It appears that the governor has lost. The incumbent Democratic governor has lost. And I think the Secretary of State, the Democratic Secretary of State, did win. And did they say whether the missing votes are from Clark County?
I don't even know.
Oh, okay. She's got to pull out a miracle. Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democratic senator.
Well, the only thing was it hers or where that I read the data a minute ago before we came on?
She's way behind where Biden was in both of those counties that she needs to do really well.
No, but which was the county I read where they said there was a decent number of
Clark County, there were still 100,000 votes, I think.
Okay, but I mean, it was actually a decent decent numbers.
100,000 votes would be a huge.
Trying to see, but okay, yeah. I don't have it handy here. So there's that.
Yeah.
Georgia, Warnock, the incumbent Democrat, he was at like maybe 49.2, 49.2 or 2. Oh, it was 2 because Herschel Walker was 48.7. I remember it was a 0.5% difference. You need 50% or 50% plus one vote in order to win in Georgia. If you get less than 50%, there's automatically a runoff, which means the top two candidates have to run against each other again. This would be in early December. Now, ironically, this is what happened last time when Warnock and Ossoff won. And it's what determined control of the Senate last time, and it could do it again.
Yeah, Ossoff had lost election night in 2020.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
He was behind 2 points, but Purdue didn't get above 50. He got 49. So he pulled it out. That's only the second time in our lifetimes in 92. Do you remember Weish Fowler?
Yeah, of course.
He had to face a runoff against Paul Coverdell. He won with 49 point something on election night, 1992, Democratic incumbent from Georgia.
Right.
A month later, he loses by 2 points to in the runoff.
Right.
So it's been a win for the Republicans once, and it's been a win for the Democrats twice.
Right.
So hopefully luck will hold, and Warnock will, or Trump will screw it all up like he did the last time.
Now, before we move to the House, actually, let me reset again, because actually, and just to explain to you, kind of do it like radio. I reset occasionally because on certainly YouTube, but especially TikTok, people keep sort of coming and going. So I think it's nice just to introduce and tell people who we are. So I am John Aravosis. You're watching the Aravosis Report. This is a special edition we're having today in response to the American election yesterday, the midterm election, Congress and the states, not the presidency. My friend Damian Corboy is here. Damian's a former staffer for Barbara Mikulski, a U.S. Senator, and also just very up on his numbers. And and I was just going to say, too, I keep forgetting. This is independent media. You guys can support me in two ways. One, follow me. If you're on TikTok, just click that follow button, subscribe on YouTube and all the other services. And if you can, I appreciate the gifts, the super chat questions. Oops. Oh, there we go. That was, I don't even know what that was. Oh, that was Inspired Woman doing the hat and mustache.
I was wondering what that was. I had a mustache all of a sudden.
Oh, that's funny. Thank you, Inspired Woman. That was a gift on TikTok. That was a gift on TikTok. Thank you, Inspired Woman. But yes, your gifts on TikTok help a lot too, because that's what helps, frankly, support my bills. So I appreciate it, guys. Keep the gifts coming, and I will always do a shout out when I see you. Yeah, she won. Ka-ching! So
can I go back really quickly to what you said about the media?
Yeah.
Something. Lauren Boebert, I was just
I was going to ask you about
surprised to find that when I Googled Lauren Boebert's 2020 election.
Tell people who Lauren Boebert
is the gun-toting Republican congresswoman whose husband married her when she was 14 or something like that. And she's very big MAGA, and she's a huge celebrity in that world.
Yeah, one of the biggest MAGA.
The biggest.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz are probably the three big MAGA.
Exactly. And she pulls in huge amounts of money, and yet she is currently behind in her race against an Aspen City Council member. And to my surprise, when I looked at her 2020 election, she'd only won by 1 point that time too. They blow her out of proportion.
Yeah,
she is not popular in her district.
Oh, I mean,
that is a Republican plus 18, 19 votes. I mean, percentage points.
No, people, my friend Cliff Schechter, who's been on the show with me before, Cliff was telling me that there was a chance of taking her out.
Yeah.
Other people weren't saying it. They were treating it as though she was like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's in a district that, 20 points ahead, like a super duper Trump district. They were treating Colorado the same way when it's not.
One of the opponents that she ran against in the primary wrote a thing for the op-ed where he said, "I'm sure she's going to be reelected." That's how obvious it was. But I'm still endorsing her Democrat because even a guy who was endorsing the Democrat running against her thought she was going to get reelected. But now she's currently behind. Also, there's another couple of things. Sean Patrick Maloney, who is the Democratic congressman and the head of the fundraising arm, he just conceded his election. Don't put a whole lot into that one. He ran in a district where they didn't like him, and the guy is not very popular.
Okay.
So he's always been a marginal member of Congress.
Right.
And he's been lucky in the past, but this time it came up to bite him, and he didn't survive. But
so let's talk about the House a little bit, and then let's open it to questions. And I will say this, on TikTok, guys, feel free to start entering your questions.
Yeah.
Go to my profile, look on TikTok, look for the Q&A button, click it and enter your questions there, because that way when we're ready to do questions, I can just pull up a bunch of them in a row. On YouTube, you know how it works. Submit your questions in the chat box. Also, super chat questions are always welcome, and I will get to super chat questions first. But let's start with talk a little bit more about the House and what we're seeing.
Well, what we're not seeing, of course, is that famous red wave that everybody told us was coming. It's not. We don't know. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, somebody's going to have control of the House by 2 or 3 votes. I don't know if it's ever ever been like that before. So that's extraordinary.
Well, Anthony, actually, wait. Let me talk about this really quick with the House.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's interesting with the House is you need 218 not votes. Mom's calling me. This is cute. Of course, I always laugh. The TikTokers will appreciate it. Mom is always calling me during my show. It's always a guarantee. I'll call her back in a bit. Mom made me forget. What were we saying?
You were saying, yeah. About the House.
Oh, about the House, yeah. So you need 218, not votes, 218 seats to control the House. The issue for Republicans now is there is a concern among Republicans that if they get the majority, which is still better for Republicans than not having control of the House, right? It's still a good thing for them. But if they only win by like 4 seats, then people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the MAGA contingents are going to have a much greater sway, because in order for the Republicans to pass any legislation, they're going to need every single Republican except 4 on board. And that gets very difficult. Yeah. And it also though empowers the liberals as well. Now, not like there's a ton of liberal Republicans, but the moderates will at least be more empowered, even though a lot of them lost.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's the other scary thing, is how many moderates are gone from the House of Representatives. So
yeah. And well, Senate too, though. I mean, you're losing, I think well, it depends too, because I think moderates often mean different things among Republicans than Democrats. Yeah. Mm-hmm. On Democrats, moderate Democrats, you often get people like Joe Lieberman, who this is an old senator. No, not anymore. Or I mean, not as a senator anymore. But Lieberman, I don't know. Maybe it's my bias, but I feel sometimes like moderate Democrats often can be conservative Republicans at times.
Yeah,
whereas,
he definitely was.
Whereas moderate Republicans aren't. Democrat. But maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe they are, though. Maybe they are.
This current U.S. Senate,
keep going.
I think that there could be a couple of. I think a lot of them have moderated. I was surprised to see the outgoing Republican senator from Missouri. Oh God, what's his name? I'm sorry, I can't think of his name right now. But he's been in office for a really long time, saying that he supported same-sex marriage. That's actually
right.
And that'll be, when is that vote coming up? Are they going to have that in December?
Oh, you mean
for marriage?
The respect? Yeah, I don't know.
That would be interesting to see how the Republicans vote on that.
Right.
So a surprising number of them in the House voted for it last year.
Right. Oh yeah. So I'll tell people again. Sorry, really quick. My guest is my friend Damian Corboy, a longtime Democratic operative here in town. I would say Democratic expert. Worked for Senator Barbara Mikulski. Damian is one of the few people I know in town who really knows his numbers, and that's why I wanted Damian here. It's funny. People ask, "Are you a Democrat?"
I'm ecumenical.
I was just going to say, Damian's kind of in the middle on that. Not a fan of MAGA and all that crazy stuff. Not a fan of liberal Democrats, I would say. Even mod Democrats drive you nuts sometimes. Yeah. But what I like about Damian, and my friend Cliff was the same way, Damian's just going to analyze the numbers.
Yeah,
it's not a matter of. Now, I will say this is actually one interesting point to raise. And once again, I'm John Aravosis. You're watching the Aravosis Report. This is my daily show I do normally about Ukraine. Tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, we will be talking about Ukraine. I do a daily update on the latest news from there. But because the election was such a big deal last night, we wanted to talk about election results right now. I was going to say, one thing that's interesting. Thank you for the gift. Lab accident, very funny. And please do follow me on TikTok. Please do follow me on YouTube. Sorry, please do follow. Oh, okay. Yeah, please do follow me on YouTube and TikTok. That's the best way you can help. And the second way you can help is please keep the gifts coming. The super chat, the super stickers, and the gifts on TikTok. We very much appreciate those. And Damien's never been on TikTok with me, so more than happy to have a few hats thrown on Damien's head. I know what I was going to say. One of the things that's interesting is whether the MAGA election denying has hurt Republicans, and I don't mean hurt them because voters seen them as extreme. I mean, that's one, or as extremist. That's one possibility, of course. But thank you for the hat. But hurt them because there was something years ago called skewed polls, okay? And it was a Republican concept. God, it could have been, it was before 2000. Was it 2016 or before that?
I'm not entirely sure.
But it was around then. So it was, now we're talking 8 years ago or something. But this idea of skewed polls, and a lot of Republican activists said, all the polls are wrong because the pollsters are liberals. And you've got to take every poll and they redid all the polls, right? And they said, oh, Mitt Romney, it was Mitt Romney because he believed it. Oh, okay. Yes, it was Mitt Romney, 2012 presidential election. And they said, oh, Mitt Romney's going to win by 4 points because when you look at the polls and take out the liberal bias, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of us were saying, trust polls or don't trust polls. But the idea that all the polls are pro-democratic and you're going to fix them is crazy. Here's the problem with that. I think the MAGA election denying has created a skewed poll problem for Republicans in this. If you think Donald Trump and the Republicans won a massive victory in 2020, okay, and the election was stolen, then you don't need to fix your messaging because you won. You won the voters. They love you, right? Right? If you think Trump won the election, then you think his messaging worked. There's no reason to change. The voters don't see him and the Republicans as extremists. And I don't think it's the only issue in yesterday's election, but I think part of it is the MAGA movement at least clearly doesn't think they need to change their message because they think they're winning and they think they won. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you think the election's stolen and it really wasn't. Anyway, but that's one possibility. We also had abortion. Now we still have to see all the polling and everything else as to how each one affected. But it looks like abortion made a big difference, right? We had the Supreme Court, very complicated, but the Supreme Court earlier this year struck down Roe v. Wade, which protected women's rights to choose. Thank you, Pretzel Guy, for the hat and mustache. It's a little complicated because the Supreme Court, thank you, Allie, the Supreme Court did not ban abortion, okay? But they took away the protections which now make it possible for the federal government or the states to ban abortion 100%. Previously, you couldn't do that, okay? So you've got Roe v. Wade, abortion made a difference. You've got young voters. It looks like young voters may have turned out. They may have. We're going to find out, right? But it looks like they may have turned out. I can't think what else with that. Maybe let's go to some questions and things, guys. Why don't we do that? Since we've been talking for a while.
Yeah, do you remember, question about your member of Congress?
Question about your member of Congress.
Or your US Senator.
Yep. As Cindy is saying on TikTok, go to my Q&A function in my profile, enter them there. On YouTube, obviously, you can just put them all here or super chat. I will also for the subscribers on TikTok, the paid subscribers, you can enter your question because I can hit the subscriber button and it'll only show me your guys' questions. So feel free to put those as well if you want. Let me see here. Do you think Boebert will lose? Brendy is asking Damien.
I have to see the exact percent. The last time I checked,
repeat who she is.
Lauren
again.
Boebert is the MAGA queen, basically.
Right.
Of she's Colorado.
Right.
She is running for her second term.
Right.
And to everybody's surprise, certainly the way the media portrayed her and her popularity in her home district, she is currently losing with what I saw about 20 minutes ago, 95% of the precincts in. She was behind by 4,000 votes. That's not a lot, but I know of congressional seats that were won once by 4 votes.
Right.
In Connecticut, Sam Gijeson's whole one. So every vote does count.
Remy is asking, do you think Catherine Cortez Masto has a chance? Again, tell people who she is.
Catherine Cortez, she is the former Attorney General in Nevada, and in 2016, she defeated an incumbent Republican, she ran in an open. Harry Reid retired.
Right.
And she won a narrow victory to the U.S. Senate and became the first Latina elected to the U.S. Senate. And she is now up against the former Attorney General who replaced her, Adam Laxalt, who is the son, and this gets a little complicated, and grandson of 2 U.S. senators, 2 Republicans, one Paul Laxalt of Nevada, and the other one Pete Domenici of New Mexico, both of whom are dead now. This guy is the complete opposite of Masto. He is a bomb thrower. He's looking for trouble, and it's just indicative of how bad the Democrats are doing across the board in Nevada this year. But if X amount of votes do come in from Clark County, which is where I think 74% of Nevada's population lives, she can still pull it out, but it will be by narrowest of margins.
Right.
We may not know. And it depends on how many absentee votes have yet to be counted too.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, Damien, please talk about Kansas results.
Well, Sharice David, the Native American, she did win re-election. I'm not at all surprised that she's a Democrat. Yes, she's the only Democrat in their delegation. She won that seat by defeating an incumbent in 2018. So she's still there. I think she represents Topeka, which would be like the university sort of. It's the one sort of Democratic stronghold still left in Kansas. Jerry Moran, who's the incumbent Republican senator, won in a landslide. Kansas, as you might recall, after Roe v. Wade was revoked, they had their big stunning election where 61% of the voters of Kansas did vote to keep abortion legal. They thought that might, and Laura Kelly, the incumbent Democratic governor, won re-election. And she won re-election because she was seen as the stable candidate, even though she ran.
We're just saying hi.
She ran against a guy named Schmidt, who was the attorney general. So both of them were very well known, but she pulled out that election. She's the first Democrat to be reelected statewide office in Kansas with a Democrat in the White House. So that's just another sign of how when one party is in the White House, it can damage their members across the country. Yeah, I think for Kansas, the very fact that Laura Kelly was reelected, that's what they're going to have to go with. And Sharice David, it's a Republican state. It's always going to be a Republican state. They haven't sent a Democrat to the U.S. Senate since 1936. So
Chris Mann versus Chris Kobach.
Oh, that is the Secretary of State race and I think
isn't that Missouri or where is that?
No, that's Kansas.
Oh, Kansas. I know it was like
is
there.
Laura Kelly defeated 4 years ago.
Thank you, Newton.
He is a real conspiracy theorist. He was doing this sort of stuff even before Donald Trump. Really, I think he's lost. I think I wish I could say, but I don't think voters in Kansas trust that guy. Okay. He's like a bad penny. He just keeps reappearing. Right. So,
now that's interesting. Frank is saying on TikTok, narrow Republican majority is good news for Biden's agenda ? He would still have a chance to work. Potentially,
but it also could all go completely off the rails in the House.
Right. I mean, let's say how it could potentially work.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, a narrow Republican majority means the Democrats almost have, let's say the Republicans have a 4-seat majority in the House. Okay. So that would mean Democrats have like 216 seats, right? You need 218 to win legislation or whatever, or 219. I always forget about that. 219, 218, whichever it is, to win the legislation. So Democrats would need like 2 or 3 Republicans to pass things. The problem becomes that, potentially, if Republicans had a slim majority, Republicans could cross over and support Democrats, and Democrats could get things done. Mm-hmm. Having said that, Republicans are very good at stopping their people from doing that. Mm-hmm. Republicans are very good at keeping all their members in line. Democrats are worse about that historically. Democrats kind of are like cats. Republicans, boom.
Mhm.
So there's that. But potentially, sure. Now, the other problem, as we said earlier, is potentially if the Republicans only have a very slim majority, let's say the Republicans win the House by only 4 seats, then you get the problem of the crazies in the House, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, running the show because she decides to walk, and every time she decides to walk, Republicans lose a vote. It's even worse than that. The way the Speaker of the House is chosen is, and frankly, any leader of a group of people. This works the same way for the Prime Minister in Great Britain or the head of the party there. The way the Speaker of the House is chosen is the members get together and vote, the members of Congress of that party. For Kevin McCarthy to become the Speaker of the House, he needs 218 of his members, or not 218, I guess it's the majority.
It's the majority.
The majority of his members voting for him. And if he doesn't get that many members, well, actually, no, Kevin, it's worse than that. No, it's worse than that. The Republicans need 218 votes or whatever to have the majority, period.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you could vote for, Republicans could all vote for Nancy Pelosi and she wins.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
So, but you get a situation where somebody like Boebert can say, I'm not even voting for the Republican majority unless you give me a prime committee seat. So all of a sudden, having a slim majority means people like Boebert could have, not Boebert, she's going to likely lose. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene could get a lot of power, which is risky.
The two Biggs of Arizona and who's
God.
Gosar of Arizona, both of whom were reelected in landslides.
But I mean,
they'll be in power to also walk away.
And they're crazy
because they don't care, and also their constituents don't care either because they keep sending them back.
Yeah, and they're absolutely crazy.
And they're absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Let me go. I will also look at the tic tac. I do that occasionally.
By the way, Democrats who are not losing the way they were supposed to lose last night, but they're also winning by some pretty unimpressive. I was pointing out that Chuck Schumer is down 3.5 million votes from his last, and even in an off-year presidential election, with you saw the Democrats winning Andrew Cuomo and Gillibrand 4 years ago in landslides, and those landslides for Democrats that should be winning in landslide. Even Newsom in California was down a huge amount.
From where he did before.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Absolutely, and it's crime. It's crime. I mean, what I pointed out, Kathy Hochul's election in New York State was, I mean, she won, and that's good that she won. She is a competent person. Plus, she's from upstate New York. She's the Democratic incumbent governor of New York who succeeded to that office when Andrew Cuomo had to resign. New York didn't do very well in the House of Representatives last night. The Democrats lost a few seats there too. So crime was a huge thing this year. There was just so much going on, and I am struck by how
I said my flash is on. Thank you.
Small some of the big name marquee Democrats. Patty Murray only winning by a few 100,000 votes in Washington State.
Interesting.
But
exactly. Okay, but then what does that even mean? It's weird because Democrats did so much better than they should have done.
Yeah.
Republicans still may get control of the House and Senate. So let's face it, even if Republicans win the House and Senate by way less than they should have, that's still a big victory for them. But at the same time, like you said, there wasn't great turnout for Schumer. There wasn't great turnout for Newsom. I don't understand.
Did not have great turnout. The races in Maryland, which were all won by Democrats, were down by 300, 400,000 votes than what they should have been.
But it seems contradictory because clearly
this whole election night and day has been contradictory.
Right. Voters were not thrilled with Republicans, but at the same time, Democrats didn't get some of the turnout they should have gotten.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, somebody's saying it's midterms.
It is. That's true. It's midterms. Absolutely. But Newsom won by 61%.
Yeah. Well, no, he's saying 61%.
Okay.
That was the point I made to you, was that Newsom was like 61 to whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously still a landslide, but well, that's the exact same margin he won the the recall by 61%.
Okay. Well, okay, so that it's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad, but I mean, in California, also California, let's go back to Congress really quickly. Katie Porter is hanging on by a thread in Orange County. Now, admittedly, that is a pretty conservative part of and she won in 2018, but that would be, if she wins that election, that's another Democrat who they were writing off.
Right.
Who managed to still hold on. And that is, I think, because they are somewhat more upper affluent congressional districts and states, and they just don't trust Republicans, period.
Thank you, Arifa. Okay, that's a pretty cool one. Sorry.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. They just don't trust Republicans for any reason whatsoever.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, we'll have to see.
So just to reset for folks, I am John Aravosis. You're watching a special edition of the Aravosis Report, which is my daily show, typically about the war in Ukraine. I will still be doing an update tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern time, talking about the latest news from Ukraine. But I have my friend Damian Corboy with me. He's a former staffer for Senator Barbara Mikulski. And Damian is an election savant. Damian knows the numbers inside out. He knows the historical numbers, which I particularly like, because he's able to put them in context and say, well, yeah, you got to look today versus 20 years ago, et cetera. And we are talking about the election results from yesterday in America. And we are talking right now about and now we got spammers, of course. Thank you, by the way, moderators. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, because we didn't announce this in advance. Let me pull up another TikTok question. What are your thoughts in the Maine governor race between Mills and LePage?
She won. And I think she won. Yeah.
Mills.
She is the incumbent Democrat.
Mills,
yes.
Right.
LePage is the former two-term governor of Maine. Neither of his elections, he didn't crack 40%. That's Maine.
Right.
Maine is the complete opposite of Georgia. You can get elected to statewide office in Maine with 18% of the vote. Right. If you happen to get the most percentage.
Keep going. I'm just looking for my pen.
LePage was sort of Donald Trump before even Donald Trump had arrived on the scene. He staged this comeback after apparently, I think, moving to Florida for a while. So he came back to Maine, ran, the Republican. He lost, I think, pretty badly to her. And she was the incumbent, and I think that helped her a lot. Also, she navigated the state fairly well during COVID, and Maine is a small state where people get to know each other. So that's a big rebuke to Paul LePage, the Republicans. Good for her. I think they're still waiting on one house. I think we're still waiting to hear whether Jared Golden, who's the incumbent Democrat from the northern part of the state of Maine, which is the more Republican part of the state, he is currently leading, but we'll have to know that in the next 48 hours or so. If that continues, that means that Maine has still, it's moving further. It's still moving. Maine used to be a state that was always Republican.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Oh, well, so was Vermont. So was New Hampshire. It's hard to believe that Vermont.
But they were
Yankee,
nice Republicans.
Exactly.
I mean,
well, not New Hampshire. New Hampshire Republicans were pretty bad, actually.
Well, okay, let's put that in more objective context. New Hampshire Republicans were very conservative. Maine Republicans tended to be rather liberal.
Exactly. Well, they didn't send any, Maine. New Hampshire also had that rabble-rouser Smith, who was just nothing but trouble. Maine has never sent anybody like that. Maine reserves that for their governor's mansion. Right.
I mean, I've got lots of more questions here. Actually, somebody was asking, and I don't know if this is too complicated of a question, because we're talking about 435 races, but they were saying, what races are we looking at in the House in terms of determining where things go, whether the House ends up Democrat or Republican?
Oh. Sherry Bustos, who's incumbent Democrat from Illinois, that's the one Democrat seat that is currently being the person running to replace her, who I unfortunately don't know the name of, but they are leading. So that seat was supposed to have been won by the Republicans.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, because Sherry Bustos retired because she barely survived in 2020. Okay. So she retired, and now it looks like her seat will still remain. Okay. There's also an open Kurt Schrader, who was the incumbent Democrat in Oregon, in the least Democrat district in Oregon, lost his primary to Jamie Skinner, who's very, very liberal, I think a lesbian. She is currently losing. That's an important one. Obviously, the Lauren Boebert one will be important. Johanna Hayes, who is a 3-term incumbent Democrat from the least Democrat district in Connecticut, which is the 5th congressional district of Connecticut, which you and I remember as Nancy Johnson's for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
So it is, Nancy Johnson was a Republican congressman for about 25 years, and she was the definition of moderate to liberal Connecticut Republican.
Right.
That seat has been in the Democratic hands. Chris Murphy, who's the incumbent Democratic senator from Connecticut, defeated her in 2006, which was a huge year for Democrats.
Right.
Johanna Hayes is currently leading by 400 votes in that district.
Look up more races as you're talking.
So that's another one to watch. If she pulls that one off, that's another great bonus for the Democrats. David Trone, who is an incumbent Democrat from Maryland's more rural Western. I think he got a little bit redistricted. He may have lost, which means that even in the phenomenal Democratic year in Maryland for the Democrats, where they swept everything, they'll probably be losing one Democratic House seat. So that sucks.
I was just looking up really quick Lauren Boebert because somebody had asked on TikTok where that stood. So 90% of votes in. Adam Frisch, the Democrat, 50.6, Boebert 49.4, which means he's ahead 1.2, which is significant. The question there becomes, one of the interesting things, and maybe Damien, you could explain this to folks. Actually, let me do a quick reset, and then we'll talk about what it means to say 90% of the votes or 93%, TFA is saying, are in, because it depends on the geography.
Right.
But let's talk about that in a second. I am John Aravosis. You're watching the Aravosis Report. I am here with Damien Corboy, a longtime friend of mine, political friend in DC, who knows elections and data and numbers inside out. We are talking about the results of yesterday's election here in America. Please do follow me on TikTok. Please subscribe on YouTube, and please keep the gifts coming on TikTok and YouTube because they help support my work. And I'm doing this for free as independent media, and it very much helps and supports and keeps me going. And I will still, the plan is to do a Ukraine update at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight. So follow for that. So Damien, the question
Can I just really interject really quick
Yeah.
regarding Lauren Boebert, whether she loses tonight or whether she loses in the next couple of days, the Republicans get their act together. Whoever the Democrat is, Keith Frisch, I think. Adam Frisch, he won't survive in 2024. That is a Republican district where you would only see her losing because her constituents said, to hell with this. She is useless.
Now that's okay, but that's really interesting if it's that strong of a Republican district, but it's pretty much a tie between the Democrat and the Republican.
I don't think any. She knocked off a long-term incumbent Republican, a very conservative, and I don't think any Democrat.
Who was that?
I don't remember his name.
Oh.
He was a backbencher.
If anybody remembers what Republican did Boebert knock off?
Which is
they'll tell us in a second.
Backbencher, by the way, is a term we use for members of Congress who do not seek the media public spotlight. They are just there serving their constituents regardless of their affiliation. And you don't hear about them very much,
right?
Whereas you hear about her nonstop,
right?
But that is a Republican district. So
now, what I wanted Damien to explain, I don't think we're going to go on too much longer because I want to get going and kind of get things done. I've got to prepare for my 6 o'clock show, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll be talking about the latest from Ukraine. One of the things that's interesting is you look at the polls, you look at the election results, and you see 90% of the votes are in, or even 50 or 60% are in, right? 50% of the votes are in, and oh my God, the Republican is ahead 80 to 20 or something, right? And of course that means the Republican's going to win, maybe not 80 to 20. What is important to look at, and this is, by the way they call races, because you'd sit there sometimes and you say, well, wait a minute, how are they calling the race when only 80% of the vote is in? If 20% is out, anything could happen. What they typically do is they look at where are the votes coming from, which counties, right? Because counties report, in America, each county reports its election results. And they look and they say, okay, 10% is remaining, we don't know, but the Democrat is currently ahead. This is actually what's happening in Arizona with Mark Kelly, I believe, right? With Mark Kelly. They say Mark Kelly is currently ahead by a little bit. The area that has not reported, I think it is Maricopa. Is it Maricopa? I guess it is. That has not totally reported in yet is a Democratic area. So and we look right now how the vote count's going. Well, if a Democratic area is what is remaining to be reported, and the Democrats ahead, then there is almost zero chance of the rest of the vote switching it to the Republican.
Mm-hmm.
But you've also got the opposite. If the Democrat is ahead, but there's 10 or 20% less left, and that 10 or 20% to be counted is a strong Republican area, then you can say, well, let's look at how it's going. That vote has been going 60% Republican to 40% Democrat, and we know when the rest of the vote comes in, there is no way the Democrat can win. This is how you see these guys and gals making these predictions, and they say, well, we have a prediction of who's going to win. And you go, wait a minute, the whole vote isn't in yet.
Chris Van Hollen last night in Maryland. Nobody in a million years thinks that he's a Democratic incumbent running for a second term. He was behind 100,000 votes at one point last night, but they'd already put the blue check as winner next to him because they knew that what was coming in was going to be so overwhelming for him. They were also basing it on the last election. How did he do in the previous election, and when did his votes come in? And they base it on things like that, and they go, oh my God, Montgomery County hasn't come in? He's going to win 80% of the vote there. That election's done. And they declare it.
Right.
And usually with that, when they're declaring them that early, they know. They're basing it on all.
Go on, keep going.
They're basing it on the previous elections, and like as John said, most importantly, where are those votes coming from? Which county? Is it a county that has 3,000 voters, or is it a county that has 5,000 voters?
And which way do they sway?
Exactly. And those counties can always, as we all know this, be right next door to each other and all in the same district. So
I'm going to look here.
Last night, for instance, I'll go back to Abigail Spanberger. She won re-election because one of the cities in the county, Spotsylvania, was so overwhelming for her that put you over. She was losing all night long, and then Spotsylvania comes in.
Right.
Or maybe it was Fredericksburg. I can't recall. And it was like, that was it.
Right.
So.
Okay, I'm gonna let's wrap this up. We've been going a while, and I've still got my show tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be doing my Ukraine update on the latest news from Ukraine. So join me then, guys. Please do follow me on TikTok, on YouTube, and thank you for the gifts. By the way, that has been very helpful, and I do this for free, so that's been I appreciate all your help. Maybe make another point or two, Damien, and then let's wrap it up.
Where is Biden going? He's leaving the country for something.
It's the G20 in Indonesia.
This is going to be, just in terms of President Biden, this is going to be a whole different affair for him. He's going to be coming in, if he's smart, as a winner. He was supposed to be humiliated this week, but he's not.
Right.
He's not. So there's that. Internationally, that looks really good for the president.
Well, you know what? Let me stop a second. Explain. This is, I think, a good part of the wrap-up. Republicans could still win the House and Senate. That will clearly not be a victory for President Biden, but explain why it still is much, you know what I mean? It's weird.
Because so many Democrats who should have been gone in this election managed to hold on.
Well, and how many seats do Democrats usually lose in the midterm elections?
In the last one?
Not Democrats. The president in power, how many seats does his or her party lose in the midterm election traditionally?
It really started, I think, certainly in our lifetimes, with Ronald Reagan in 1982, when he lost about 36 House seats, Republican House seats in 1982.
Okay.
And several Senate seats. Then it slowed, and it didn't really happen again until 1994. And now it averages that the worst waves, which have been 94, 2006, 2010. Obama.
Right.
He lost 40-something House seats.
Trump, 2018.
Trump lost 40-something in 2018. Although you don't hear this very often, but the Republicans did great in the U.S. Senate in 2018.
Okay. Obama lost 60.
Obama.
Oh, say,
yeah,
oh,
it
wow.
was. It may have been the biggest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
I forgot that.
they always lose. Is that recently though? It's been these huge waves. The last 30 years, it's been waves as opposed to 10, 18. Jimmy Carter lost like 18 or something like that.
Which is basically a strong rebuke against the president's power.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So the idea is if you don't have a huge wave, if you don't have 40, 60 votes against the president, against the party in power, then it's not a clear repudiation of the president, I guess. And actually, I'd go one step further. What is weird, and again, I'm going to say it again. If Republicans win the House and/or Senate, that is a big victory for Republicans. It doesn't matter if they win by 1 seat. That is still a big victory. It's kind of the joke about what do you call the guy who's last in his class in med school, doctor, right?
They have the committee chairmanships. They got the gavels.
Yeah, I mean, they're able to stop Biden from passing legislation. In the Senate, they stop nominations. In the Senate, they'll stop Supreme Court nominations.
And federal.
So
which they also like to stop.
So it's a big deal. But Biden is not a popular president.
And it's the midterms.
It's the midterm. Okay, it's the midterms. The president should lose a lot of votes in Congress, a lot of seats. He didn't. Biden is very unpopular, meaning historically, Trump was a little more unpopular, of course. But when you're talking 42% approval, that's horrific for a party coming in. You should be decimated. We weren't, or Dems weren't. You've got inflation. Inflation is bad. I mean, again, Democrats like to downplay it. Inflation's bad right now.
It's bad everywhere.
It's bad around the world, which would be the Democratic defense to say you can't really blame Biden because it's bad in the UK. It's bad literally worldwide. But doesn't matter. Voters look at it and say inflation's really bad. It's and the opinions on is the country going in the right direction or the wrong direction. People say bad direction. Now, that can be a combination of Republicans saying Democrats suck. It can be Democrats saying Republicans suck. Our democracy's in danger, abortion, right? But the point is, when people voting rights, when the voters think the country's going in the wrong direction, that's usually bad for the guys in power. It is very strange. It makes you think democracy, like all the Republican election denial, actually had an impact. Meaning it scared Democrats and independents, most importantly. The anti-abortion stuff got women out. Youth, I'm not sure what motivated youth in particular, right? I'd be very curious. Climate or what?
And voting rights apparently in Georgia.
Oh, interesting.
Was huge. They were, David Kelly, by the way, no, Obama cannot run for re-election again. He served his 2 terms.
Right. You can only serve 2 terms.
Yeah.
Trump
served them non-consecutively, but you can't.
Right, because Trump served 1 term, so he can serve a 2nd term if he gets it.
We've had it once.
Yeah.
That was Grover Cleveland.
Yeah.
He was our 22nd and 24th.
So wrap up, and then we're going to close up here.
Wrap up is that Americans don't trust Democrats, but they also really don't trust Republicans. I think that
interesting. Okay, that's funny.
And I think, I mean, this election that's still going on is it's really, really out there. This has been a surreal midterm.
Right.
And
how far back do you have to go to find an election this?
Well, 98 was unusual because Bill Clinton
had just been impeached.
That actually worked in his favor.
And ironically, it's funny too, looking in retrospect, because now we're talking, my God, 25 years. I remember at the time, I don't want to get into the whole impeachment thing. I was not happy that he was impeached because it felt partisan. It felt like Republicans did it just to be jerks. But
especially since we knew who their private lives
were. We knew their private lives. But I was not happy with Bill Clinton. And I remember telling a friend of mine, I don't want him removed from office, but if I could close my eyes and make a wish, I wish he'd just go away and stop being president. And so you did have that ambivalence about impeachment, but he was impeached for something that was still kind of really scummy. I mean, the Monica stuff from him was scummy. So you didn't have Clinton impeached for something like the Republicans maybe going to impeach Biden, where it's kind of like, give me a break.
I thought that's
right. Clinton was kind of scummy, and he
He
still did
was.
really well in the
They
midterms.
still, yeah, they picked up 5 additional seats, and they only lost. They had one
You know?
very flawed Senate candidate,
Right.
Kara Mosley Braun.
But let's say one thing that I think people, and I don't want to get into a whole Clinton discussion here, but young people, young Democrats actually today, they don't appreciate how popular Clinton was, and frankly, how good of a job he did as president with the economy, especially, but with a lot of things. And you can't ignore that when you're trying to figure out what, in any case. But what we were talking about was how far back, how far back you have to look to find a situation where the incumbent president's party didn't get gutted.
Oh, 2002 with W, but he had 9/11.
Okay.
So they actually, they picked up Senate seats and picked up House seats in 2002, which was a complete reversal.
Okay.
They already controlled the Republicans, already controlled the Senate and the House. No, they lost the Senate because Jeffords switched in 2001.
Okay.
So going into
that was that era.
Yes,
Yeah.
going into the November 2002 midterms of George W. Bush's 1 year after 9/11.
Right.
His party, the Republicans, actually picked up a couple Senate seats and picked up several House seats.
Right.
That was highly unusual, but that was a highly unusual midterm because of 9/11 did change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then give people the final. Just give a handful of races they need to keep an eye on.
You need to keep races on everything that's happening in Nevada, and that includes the Attorney General's race, Secretary, the Governor. I think the Governor has already lost, the Democrat. Catherine Cortez Masto, the senior U.S. Senator from Nevada, the Democrat. You need to keep an eye on that. And the 3 incumbent Democrats there that are doing very poorly. The last time I checked, they were all at just 50%.
At U.S. House.
At U.S. House,
Right, okay.
Yeah. Dina Titus, Stephen Horsford, and I think Susan Lee. It's a diverse. It would also mean, oh, that's interesting. Nevada would also go from having, because of its small size, one of the more diverse congressional representatives. Jewish female U.S. Senator, Italian and Latina U.S. Senator, Greek American from Georgia, Dina Titus, Stephen Horsford, who's black, and Lee, who I believe is Asian. And it would now all become all white people.
Okay.
So that's also sort of,
Okay.
Oh, and of course, Arizona. Governor's race in Arizona, Katie Hobbs, the Democrat, election denying Carrie Lake,
The Republican.
Right.
And Hobbs is ahead.
The Democrat for, I believe, Attorney General and Secretary of State.
And by the way,
Party won.
we all sort of assumed that race was lost going into last night.
Yes, because Hobbs was.
We assumed Hobbs was not running a good campaign, was the impression. Lake, very well spoken.
And everywhere. She was crisscrossing that state and saying.
And message. I mean, again, election denier, horrific election denier, but messaging.
Can't get her off of it.
Well spoken and keeps to a message, which is really good in politics.
Yeah. Well, professional TV people, including Mehmet Oz, although that didn't work out, are better. It's part of who they are, and she was a news anchor for 25 years.
No, she was very good at it.
Keep them, and also keep an eye on that incumbent Republican Schweiker in Arizona, who might be losing, and the incumbent Democrat in Arizona who may. So that's a win-win, or that's a draw. And just keep an eye on all those marginal seats right now that haven't been called, because it's going to be really interesting to see how they go. They're all going to be so close.
Now, the last point I'm going to make.
Democrats don't have anything to be ashamed of this year.
Well, the last point I was going to make is somebody else is saying again, Zach is saying Lake is only down 10,000 votes and 30% still to count. Do one final explanation of what I was saying about how it's not enough to say, hey, 30% is out, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Explain.
Right, because I believe that they're still waiting for the votes from Maricopa, which is the largest county in Arizona and is going to go to the Democratic nominees. So the fact that she's down with 80% in, that she's down by only 10,000, if 50,000 come in from Maricopa and 30,000 of them are for Hobbs and Mark Kelly, the Democratic incumbent senator, then that should be it. The Democrats should. I think this will be the first time since World War II, if this works out for the Democrats, where they will have everything in Arizona. Secretary of State, Attorney General, Governor. There's no Lieutenant Governor in Arizona. And both U.S. Senate seats. I think it'll be since World War II that that's been the case there.
Now, I'm just looking really quick. Arizona Central really quick.
Oh, in Michigan,
Hmm.
the Democrats flipped the Senate and the House there for the first time in 40 years.
Now, this is interesting. Hang on.
That's interesting.
In Maricopa County on Wednesday morning, counting continued on ballots dropped off on Election Day and received in the immediate days before. In an update, Board of Supervisors chairman said about 400,000 votes remain uncounted, with most of those being ballots dropped off Tuesday. Now, ballots dropped off would tend to be more Republican than early voting. Early voting tends to be more Democrat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carrie Lake is saying the new votes are going to put her over the top. Let's see here. The issue becomes Maricopa, like we were saying. Okay, here's the interesting question, Damien, and I don't know whether you know. Okay, here's the interesting question. Maricopa tends to vote Democratic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Votes that come in Election Day tend to at least skew more Republican than votes that are early voting. Early voting tends to be Democrat. The question becomes, I guess, if we know historically Election Day voting in Maricopa,
right,
which way it skews, Democrat or Republican, and whether that means Carrie Lake could catch up.
Correct.
I don't know though.
I'm guessing no.
I mean, you would really need the old data.
Yeah.
That's where CNN pulls up the board and clicks the button to look at all the previous races.
Yeah.
He's going to do a quick look here.
Let's see how.
And then, Chris, I do see your question, so we'll definitely ask your question before we close up. I will just explain to folks while Damien's looking. I am John Aravosis. You're watching a special edition of the Aravosis Report. This is my daily show where normally we talk about the latest news from Ukraine and the war, but because yesterday was a huge election in America and actually ended up being really huge because the election results are so crazy, I am talking to my friend Damien Corboy, who worked in the U.S. Senate with me and is also an election expert, knows the election data inside out, about what all these numbers mean. Damien is currently looking up Arizona because we were talking about the governor's race there with Carrie Lake, the Republican, running against Hobbs, I'm forgetting her first name, the Arizona Democratic Secretary of State. And Hobbs is slightly ahead of Carrie Lake. People were saying as of this morning that it looked like Lake was going to lose, but 30% of the vote is still outstanding. But 30% is from Maricopa, which tends to be a Democratic county. So it's not expected in general that thank you, Karen, that it's not expected in general that those additional votes will help the Republican. But the votes being counted now, according to the reports, are votes that came in on Election Day itself. So Damien's trying to look up and see, does that mean they're Republican votes or Democratic votes? Which votes? Do we have any sense?
It's the largest. It's home to 61% of the registered voters in the state of Arizona.
Maricopa.
Okay. So that is extraordinary. It did vote for Donald Trump in 2016.
Maricopa did?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It says it is a traditionally, it's
interesting.
Arizona, so it would not be surprising that it's traditionally Republican.
Right. Interesting.
Yes, but Maricopa's the 55,900 margin of vote between Kristen Sinema in 2018 and Martha McSally in Maricopa put Kristen Sinema over the top.
Look,
I think that Maricopa is probably going to expected to lean more towards the Democrats this year.
But I guess I will, and maybe we'll conclude with this point. I think the person that raised the point is raising a good point. I think it was Zach, that this is the point we're saying is when you see a chunk of the vote remaining, in this case 30%, in principle, that should make you say, hey, anything can happen.
Right.
What you want to do is you want to look at where that vote is coming from. Is it outstanding in a Republican district? Is it outstanding in a Democrat district? In a Republican county? In a Democratic county? Because that will then give you a sense. In this case, the Democrats ahead, the Republicans behind, Carrie Lake versus Hobbs for governor, but not by much. So you don't need a lot to shift the vote, to shift who's ahead. So you want to see where are the votes outstanding, a Republican area or a Democratic area, and then you do the analysis from there. I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for joining us. This is Damien Corboy. I'm John Aravosis. I will be back at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight to talk about Ukraine, the latest on the war there. So come back on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. And thanks for joining us, guys. And thank you for the gifts. I always appreciate it. And also thank you for the moderators. I know, as always, on TikTok, you've got your job cut out for you. And I was watching you do that. So thank you for that. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye. I will be back at 6 p.m. Eastern. All right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to hang up on YouTube first and then TikTok. See you guys.